truly, it's so nice to be here with you all. So nice to be here. And so why don't we start off this evening just by being quiet and closing our eyes, going inward. And so I invite you just to take some deep, full breaths. Just to allow the sound of the bell to draw you inward. So I invite you to drop all thoughts and just come into the body. And just feel what's here. Sometimes life is very, very busy for us. In this moment, I invite you simply to feel, to experience, and just to arrive here in the present moment. And so we're just breathing in, breathing out. Can you feel, can you experience the gentleness of this moment, the innocence of this moment? Let yourself land here fully. Just noticing if there's any gripping in your mind, trying to think about this or that. Any tension in the throat chakra, the heart, the shoulders, the jaw. And just take a deep breath and just invite it all just to relax. Invite it all simply to fall away. Just deep, full breaths. Again, just breathing in, breathing out. Just feeling, experiencing. Just bringing some gentle attention to the heart chakra. Just noticing, am I carrying anything heavy in the heart? Is there any pain or sadness or irritability, attachment to this or that? Just giving yourself full permission just to breathe and feel. I invite everyone just to relax a little bit more deeply. I can see some of you are quite serious right now, and so I'm going to invite you just to relax. Breathing into the belly and just allowing your deep breaths just to gently massage and soothe the body, the nervous system. Again, so many of us, we live in a heightened state of arousal or pain, or chasing this thing or that thing, or trying to heal, or dealing with trauma or pain or confusion. And with each deep inhale, I invite you just to relax more and more and more. Again, just feeling, experiencing, even gently smiling at the difficulty of life, the chaotic nature of life. And so again, just breathing in, breathing out, feeling. And so I'm going to invite you all to relax your hara, your lower belly, the pelvis, pelvic floor, arms, the hands, the legs, the feet. And then just breathing in, breathing out. Becoming more and more relaxed, at ease. You may notice the mind becoming quiet and silent. And I invite you just to notice that there's just this gentle presence of silence right here, right now. This gentle presence of silence. The very fabric of your being, the very fabric of awareness. Just this silent presence, which is allowing the coming and going of thought, which is allowing the sound of my voice. And just noticing different sensations just unraveling throughout your consciousness. Again, just breathing, feeling. Can you give yourself permission this moment simply to surrender to the silence of your being, this quiet, gentle luminosity and vitality of your being. Just breathing in and breathing out. Noticing there is something good here. Something fundamentally good about your nature. Sometimes in life our egoic nature, our personality feels broken, feels confused, it feels overwhelmed. At this moment I'm inviting you to get in contact with that which is good, that which is whole, that which is complete. And so this requires that you put everything down. The story of the pain, put down the thoughts, and simply breathe and feel. And just allow whatever wants to unravel to unravel. So breathing in, breathing out. And so you're noticing the silence, this luminosity. Simultaneously, I'm inviting you to notice this quiet strength. There's a quiet strength that's here that has outlived every aspect of pain, every confused mental state, every physical sickness or injury or accident. There's something here which is timeless, which is eternal, which is strong. So I invite you just to get in touch with this. So we're just breathing in, breathing out, feeling the silence, this gentle luminosity and goodness, and quiet strength, quiet strength. So this is what the Buddha called your true nature, your original nature, your innate divinity. So just breathing in, breathing out. And from this space, this being in contact, of waking up to the depth of your being, I invite you just to bring some attention, some awareness to your crown chakra. And just welcome a heavenly descent. Just a willingness to open the door there. Most surrendered way, innocent way. Just inviting God, life, the supreme intelligence of the universe to show us something greater. To bring forward something greater. Something greater than a little human mind, an emotional nature that fights with life, a body that feels overwhelmed. Lord, can you show us something greater, a greater mind, whose nature is cosmic silence? So I invite you just to take a couple deep breaths there. Just inviting this presence, feeling, this grace coming into the space of the mind. Just waking up, a cosmic silence. Just noticing when you give yourself permission to surrender, to let go. You may notice something just gently waking up within you. So you can take a couple more deep, full breaths there and feel into your heart. We'll say, Lord, show me a greater heart, greater love, a greater bliss, greater luminosity that I'm currently experiencing, and just beginning to notice this descent of grace coming down through the crown chakra into your heart. Just feeling this presence of luminosity, a greater love, greater compassion, a gentle stream of bliss flowing into you. Just breathing in, breathing out. And in order to fully contact this, you have to be willing to surrender that which is heavy. You have to be willing to surrender your emotional nature as that which you know yourself to be. So just breathing in and breathing out. Just giving yourself permission to be bigger, to be greater. Than just your regular emotional nature, whatever vibration that is. So just breathing in, breathing out. For those of you who are very sensitive, you may notice just this descent of grace, this awakening in the heart, the space of the mind. I invite you to take a couple more deep, full breaths and just feeling into the belly. Letting go of any grip in the belly, any tension. Just inviting a new body to come alive. A new body where you're not limited by your physicality, the sickness, the feeling of overwhelm, your age, your gender, your flexibility, your athletic ability, whatever it is. We're just giving ourselves permission to surrender our body, to open, to receive this awakening, this evolution. A greater body coming forward, a light body, a yogic body. Where you are living in alignment with grace, living in alignment with love, with truth, with strength, with peace. You see all 7 chakra centers awake, alive, luminous, radiating with light. Your whole body from head to toe just flooded with light, flooded with grace. Breathing in, breathing out. Will you receive that which is greater? Will you receive the gifts that I have for you? says the voice of God, will you receive a greater mind, a greater heart, a greater body? So I invite you all just to breathe into this, to let go of the small human self, and just to invite this greater transmission, this greater receptivity. So just breathing in, breathing out, feeling, experiencing, gently smiling and letting go. Now's the time for a new life, new mind, new heart, new body. So I invite you to take a couple more deep, full belly breaths, just breathing this in, feeling, experiencing, relaxing. And when you're ready, you can just gently open your eyes if you feel called to. You're also welcome just to stay in a state of meditation. Either way, I encourage you not to jump back into your mind, but to experience directly what's happening now. To stay with the truth and the direct experience of this moment. And so someone wrote to me this week, and they were asking me about the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and about, the lineage that I come from. And I thought I just might mention a couple words on this. One of the great things that Aurobindo brought forward was this whole system of yoga called integral yoga. Integral yoga, it's different than other types of yoga, which try to get you to transcend life, try to get you to, the goal is to transcend the world, to achieve some, state of enlightenment that's very similar to being monk-like, and by that I mean detached and removed from the world. What Aurobindo brought forward was this yoga called integral yoga. And integral yoga was a system of yoga that embraced every aspect of life. Every aspect of life. And the beautiful thing about it is it's radically inclusive. It doesn't see the ego as something that's wrong or bad or a mistake by God. Basically, according to the teachings of Aurobindo, everything is viewed through the experience of evolution. So there's lower aspects of evolution, like our animal nature, and then there's higher aspects of evolution, such as our divine mind, our divine expression. And his whole, school of integral yoga was to help people to evolve out of an animal state of being, a fight or flight way of being, and into a divine way of being where you're living in full alignment with God's grace, God's truth, God's divinity. But not only that you're living in alignment with it, you become one with it. One with it. And so he broke down his teachings. He focused on three main aspects here, and I'll just speak about them again. I'll try to briefly, although Aurobindo is one of those individuals who is probably one of the brightest individuals who's ever walked the planet, and he's written volumes. I have so many of his books that I haven't even read because they're just so dense and full. But he broke down his teachings, basically into these three different levels. He spoke about the mental body, the emotional body, or the vital body, and the physical body. And so it's all three of these bodies have the ability to wake up and to become enlightened. And I'll just give an example here. So the mental body, the mental body is not seen as something that's bad or wrong. The ego is not seen as something bad or wrong. The mind is not seen as something that simply needs to be transcended. Aurobindo taught, first it's important to get in touch with silence and that awake, aware witness. And this is pretty much, what Buddhism speaks about, is getting in touch with the depth of awareness. So you have a sense of innate clarity. But simply because you're in touch, with awake awareness and knowing oneself as silence, doesn't mean that the nature of your mind actually changes. And so through the process of evolution, we may notice we're born into this world with a pretty confused mind that's driven by the vital force or the emotional force of ego, the fight or flight principle. But as we grow, we tend to develop a mature mind. We try to develop a mature mind, that's rational, that can think clearly, see clearly. We go to college or university or whatever it is. And we sharpen the sword of the mind. But eventually what Aurobindo teaches is there's a step beyond this. And in order to go beyond the mind, you have to be willing to surrender even your very sophisticated mental mind, to surrender, to open to and receive this greater mind, a universal mind, what some may call cosmic consciousness. And so through this path, again, we don't see the ego as bad or wrong. Simply see it as a lesser aspect of consciousness. There's too many paths that teach that the ego is bad or wrong or a mistake. And when we hold that view, oftentimes there tends to be like a self-hatred, a self-judgment, a judgment of one's humanity, making oneself bad or wrong. And keep in mind, God made us human. And so it's quite a predicament, to be born into a human body, to have a divine spirit, and then to think that it's a mistake, to think that you're wrong because you have desirous thoughts or, because you're attracted, to a male or a female, or, because you're attached to this thing or that thing. The way Aurobindo teaches is those are all just stepping stones, and we're evolving out of that, into a greater and greater level of divinity. But evolution happens through taking steps forward, but it also happens through surrender. And so if your mind, say, for example, is in chaos, is in a chaotic way of being, you surrender the chaos and you find a rationality, you find a clarity, you find a silence. And after you have found the silence and the clarity, and a very rational mind, a rational response, to the former chaos, or the chaos in your life, and you go one step further and say, Lord, will you show me a greater mind? So you let go of your rational nature and come into your intuitive nature. And then there's a step beyond the intuitive nature, into the universal intelligence, where you feel as if the mind of God and your mind is one mind. The intelligence of life is moving through you, thinking through you. See, thoughts are not bad. They're not wrong. They're just a lower level of consciousness. But true thought is a movement of God's intelligence in you as you. And you experience that intelligence. It doesn't feel like rationality. It doesn't feel like philosophy. It feels like you are the universe creating, experiencing itself in all its beauty and glory. And so Aurobindo offers this teaching in response to the mind, in response to the emotional nature. And so say, for example, in our emotional nature, we're just stuck in pain. And so we study emotions, we study psychology, we learn to work with pain, we learn how to let go of pain, how to heal pain. And as you do that, what you notice is you go from being in a state of pain and confusion or agitation or suffering through the path of surrender, letting go of pain. You start moving into states of, what was taught like in the self-help movement, like the human potential movement, where you're just a naturally happy person. I might call this Tony Robbins energy, where you just feel like you're on fire, you're happy to be alive, you're living your truth, you're living your life purpose, this and that. You have healthy human relationships, you have a healthy human psychology. And then again, we look to God and say, well, what's next? We look to life and say, what's next? And then we take this leap and let go into the divine heart, where we experience universal love, universal compassion, an unconditional relationship with life, unity consciousness, where you feel as if your very nature is bliss itself. So Aurobindo called this the vital mind. The emotional nature he referred to as the vital. All these aspects of our human self can be upgraded, can evolve into that which is higher, that which is greater. And the ultimate goal here is the transformation of the body. And this is where it can sound a little new agey or science fiction-y, but if you look at what's happening on planet Earth, throughout the whole universe, his evolution is happening. It's happening whether we like it or not. The Buddha didn't know this, so the path of Buddhism, was about getting to nirvana, getting to a place where nothing arises anymore. Basically going back to the primordial energy of creation. It's often referred to as Prajnaparamita, Great Mother, who's pregnant with all phenomena. And so the experience of nirvana is going back to the source. But in integral yoga, we honor that the source is here, eternally here, giving birth to life, giving birth to something greater. And the invitation is to see that your human life is the very evolving nature of God. That this body, we're not just meant to be a soul in a flesh body. Eventually, maybe in 1,000,000 years or so, a couple thousand, who knows, but this body will be transformed purely into a light body. Some Buddhist tantric teachers have called this the Vajra body, where you're able to travel through dimensions and keep your body throughout lifetimes. That's something a little bit different than what Aurobindo spoke about it, but it's similar. And the reason I bring this up is because when we have an evolutionary view of the spiritual path, we're not trying to get rid of ourselves all the time. We're not looking at oneself like we're bad or we're wrong. In this path, it's a much more developed path than some of the ancient paths that didn't understand evolution. And when we start to see and experience life from this perspective, we see that life makes sense, that science makes sense, that quantum theory makes sense, that all of life, our soul nature, this travel through lifetimes, it's not just one giant mistake where we're just trying to get off planet Earth and get to heaven. But the invitation here is to realize oneself as God. But in order to do that, you must walk through this doorway of humility. You have to surrender the lesser aspects of your consciousness. into that which is greater. Into that which is greater. So yesterday I was at mass, at a Catholic mass, and my little girl, she goes to Catholic school and she's in kindergarten, and so it was like a family slash back to school mass. So all the kids sat up front with their families, and it was really beautiful. And they had all the children singing the songs and reading reading the text, the Bible, and it was so sweet. It was just so precious. And as I sat in there in mass, my heart just kept breaking open more and more and more as I heard their little voices singing, hallelujah, hallelujah, praise be God, we are the chosen ones, whatever the little songs were. And I just felt this supreme innocence in their nature. Their willingness just to show up and try to be the best they could. And they were so deeply sincere, it just broke your heart open. See, this is the energy of surrender. Too often what I've seen when people study Aurobindo's teachings, they study it from a place of philosophy and they get into the science of it. People do this with a lot of yoga, a lot of, they read yoga, they read the sutras, they read the Buddhist texts from a place of philosophy. But it's so nice just to be childlike and innocent. Because when we're innocent, our heart is open, our mind is open, our crown chakra is open, and we are receptive to this greater movement. The movement of God is a movement of intelligence. It's a movement of evolution. It's a movement of growth. It's a movement of awakening. But not just awakening to that which is absolute and already perfect. Yet not in form. It's an awakening to the absolute in form, to change form, to change the very nature and the fabric of your mind. So that we're not spending the rest of our life trying to transcend our mind or fight our mind or rationally argue with our mind, whatever level of consciousness we're at. This path is about having a radically different mind. So that the mind of God and your human mind is one mind. This is possible. There's been saints and sages throughout history who've realized this. But what Aurobindo brought forward is this invitation for this to happen on a collective sphere. So we don't just, destroy ourselves and destroy our planet and our ecosystem, so that something greater can come forward. So we can truly live in harmony with the planet, with each other. It's inviting there to be growth on all levels of being. Whether we're a farmer or an astronaut or spiritual teacher, environmentalist, whatever it is. It was an invitation to bring forth an integral awakening. An integral awakening. And at this moment in history, it might seem like a little bit like a pipe dream, but it's what we need. It's what we need. All of us, if we're going to survive. And so anyways, I could go on, and I thought I'd open it up to some questions here. Got a couple emails, and let me just look in the comments and just see. Here's one from Rhonda. She writes, Craig, can you suggest a practical process for opening the heart chakra when it is blocked by issues of self-esteem and self-forgiveness? I understand it's ego-based, but I am unsure how to get past it. So self-esteem is not something you get past. Self-esteem is a necessary building block on the spiritual path. If you don't have healthy self-esteem on the path, you will have no spiritual power. No spiritual power. You'll have no discernment, no discipline. And so in order to unblock the heart chakra, I'm going to use a different vocabulary because I don't like saying unblock the heart chakra. It's all about love, Rhonda. You loving you. You loving you. You loving the wounded aspects of self. The parts of yourself that feel broken, that feel abused, that are living in heartache and sadness and fear. And I want you to imagine there's a little child there. And her self-esteem wasn't able to develop because she was wounded and she's stuck. She's stuck at that level of development. And so if we have issues with self-esteem, we have to be unconditionally loving with ourselves. And so that first requires that you listen to your pain, listen to your heartache, listen to your sadness, listen to the screams, the anxiety, the fear. But let me be clear here about how we listen. We listen the same way a good loving mother or a good loving father will listen. A mother or father will listen to the screams of their child, but not believe that the scream or the pain defines the child. So say, for example, my little girl, she had a friend over today. And they were just having a hard time, the two of them. And my little girl was just fighting with this other girl. And so as a parent, I get down at her level. I pick her up. I pull her heart close to mine. Say, sweetie, what's going on? And she says, well, Zoe's doing this and Zoe's doing that. And I say, sweetie, what's really going on? I'm just really tired. Okay, good. So I'm going to invite you to listen to the pain that's under the screen. Listen to the true need. One of the ways we build self-esteem is through loving oneself fully and learning to listen to oneself fully. Going back to the teachings of Aurobindo, if our vital nature is stuck at a very low level of development, we don't have we don't have a good, healthy sense of egoic self-esteem, we'll have pain in our heart. We'll have a door that's shut there. So it's through a willingness to breathe into the pain, to love the pain, that pain, the emotion, the sadness, the grief will begin to release. And as it does so, the heart grows. It's no longer veiled in pain, and it becomes powerful. One of the great reasons on the path that people fail at healing is because they have low self-esteem. When you have low self-esteem, again, you don't have spiritual power. And so you may take like 3 deep breaths. Okay, I know I'm in pain. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. And then all of a sudden you say, oh my God, I feel overwhelmed. This is too much. And so you stop breathing and then you go distract, or you run here, or you run there. And so one of the great ways of developing self-esteem is through simply just laying down in bed where you are fully supported, placing a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, and just breathing into your heart, saying, I love you. And as you breathe out, and it's okay. I love you, and it's okay. And you may do this for an hour a day. You may do this for 3 hours a day. There's big periods of my life where I literally laid on the floor for 3 hours a day, just holding my heart, feeling my innate goodness, connecting with my innate goodness, connecting with that aspect of myself which was not broken, and then breathing into the love, breathing love into the aspect of myself that felt broken. And so it's through this practice that we develop self-esteem. It's also through this practice that we release our egoic consciousness and step into a divine heart, an unconditionally loving heart. And so, beautiful question, Rhonda. Beautiful question. So you said one more thing about self-forgiveness. I'll just mention about that. Can you forgive yourself for being human? Can you forgive yourself for making mistakes? Can you forgive yourself for being foolish? Can you forgive yourself for having an ego? Can you forgive yourself for having a fight or flight response? Keep in mind, God gave you all these things. And so I always like to say, do you want to blame someone for your thinking mind or for your foolish behavior? Or blame God. God gave us all of this. If God didn't want anger to exist, it wouldn't exist. If God didn't want confusion to exist, it wouldn't exist. But God gave us an evolutionary world. And we're born into that. And we're not all born as enlightened masters. Most of us are born little kids who get really confused. And we have parents and they don't always know how to parent us perfectly or show us the way. Oftentimes they have their own struggles and they pass that on to us. And so can you forgive yourself, Rhonda, for being human? For being human. And can you just smile, at this experience of life? It's really a crazy setup. Is we are these divine beings, and yet we have a human body, a human mind, a human emotional nature. It's like, giving someone a computer from like 15 years ago and asking them to connect to the internet. It's not going to work that good. It's not going to work that good. And so our job is to grow, to outgrow the mind we've been given, outgrow the emotional nature we've been given, outgrow the body we've been given, and invite something greater to come forward. It's a beautiful question, Rhonda. Thank you for this. And I'm going to invite anyone in the Zoom room, if you have a question, please raise your hand, leave it in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to answer a question that came in through email. Let's see here. This is a question about kundalini. Craig, for the last 6 years, I've been undergoing a pretty severe kundalini process. As in the nature of process itself at times has been very heavenly and near hellish. And this first sentence just says a lot. One of the things, it's good to have this perspective on the path. Just to realize that the path, it's an evolutionary path. And so sometimes it's going to be hellish. Sometimes it's going to be heavenly. Heavenly. When you have healthy self-esteem, it gives you the strength, the power to walk in the direction of the heavenly, of having more heavenly, having a greater experience. When you have low self-esteem, we tend to just focus on the hell or the difficulty or the pain. Craig, the reason I'm reaching out to you is maybe to receive some insight or to aid in calming the fire and the overall intensity of this force. There is fear to greater or lesser degree in the back of the mind caused by this immense amount of vibratory fire and pressure all over, but most specifically in my brain. I'm concerned that I may end up with brain damage from this. And so please let me, I get this question a lot and I laugh sometimes when I hear it. When something incredible is waking up in you, it may come with light, it may come with grace, it may come with intensity, it may come with pressure, but it is not here to kill you. It's not here to give you brain damage. It's not here to harm your body. It's here to transform your body. Now, I want all of us, as adults, just to imagine something silly. I want us all to imagine that starting tomorrow, we are going to go through a second puberty. And our body's going to be flooded with hormones. We're going to have crazy thoughts. There's going to be bizarre experiences. our face and our skin might do, funny things. We might start growing more hair, in different parts of our body, and it'll get really weird, difficult, and messy. The spiritual path is like this. It's like this. Puberty is a step forward. It's growing out of, just being a child. So this light that's coming into you, Leela, this light that's coming into you, it's inviting something greater. It may feel like it's cooking your brain, but I assure you, the light of Kundalini, the light of grace, is not here to cause permanent brain damage in your consciousness. It's not here to do that. It's here to transform your mind. But this process of spiritual awakening, it can push most of us. It will push most of us to the very edge. We will have uncomfortable feelings. It'll be difficult. It'll be strange. There'll be times when it feels like our body is really heating up. Now, I always encourage people, if you feel like there is a physical thing that's happening in you, please go see a doctor. Please go see a doctor. But I assure you, the light of grace, the light of Kundalini, is not here to harm you, but simply here to bring forth a greater mind. One of the things that it's doing is it's cooking the karma out of your consciousness. It's cooking the old habits out of your consciousness. Like literally cooking. And I don't necessarily mean with heat, but I encourage you, if you feel this burning, if you ever have a meditation where you feel really hot, go get a thermometer and check your temperature. And you'll notice you may feel really hot in your body, but your temperature is still the same. Still the same. I've had so many outlandish experiences on this path. Shaking, convulsing, contorting of the body, this burning fire that you're speaking about in the mind. It felt like it was raining acid in my head for the good part of, a year and a half. I thought I might be being burned alive from the inside. But as you see, there's someone who's still here who could function pretty well in this world. It didn't kill me. In fact, I actually have quite an extraordinary consciousness now. And so was it worth it? Absolutely. Was it confusing? Absolutely. It was completely confusing. So the big thing, Leela, what I'm going to invite for you is to surrender. Surrender beyond yourself. You may even call upon God herself to come into you, to give you the strength, to live through you, to act through you, to love through you. When I was at Mass yesterday, with all these, with all the little kids, from the Catholic school, the songs were really beautiful. Again, they were real Christian songs, like "We are the chosen people." Lord, live through me. Give me the strength to be patient, to be strong, to live your truth, to live your holiness. Give me the strength. Give me the strength. And so I invite you, to pray in this way, to open in this way, to call upon something greater than yourself. Spiritual awakening is a shift in identity. It's a transformation of identity. It's the realization that you and God are one. It's a big deal. God has a lot of fire. God also has a lot of silence. Realize both Shiva and Shakti, in you as you. One of the great things that saved me on this path was simply the realization of silence. Of silence. So if I felt like I was burning up inside, what I would do is I would notice there's silence here everywhere. There's space here everywhere. There's freedom here everywhere. Despite the pain, there's a silence, a freedom, a greatness, an indestructibility. An indestructibility. This is what life is inviting you to discover. That you are a goddess, not just a small human body with a small human mind, with a small, human heart. There's something great here. God is trying to show you Christ-like strength through giving you something overwhelming. If we are good Christians, we'd call this our cross. Jesus looked at that cross and said, Lord, will you take this cup from me? God said no. And Jesus said, okay, I'll fall on my knees. I'll have a good cry. I'll open to your strength, to your humility, your love, and I'll walk forward. I'll walk forward. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. So Leela, the other thing I'm going to remind you, and this is to anyone who's going through a very powerful awakening, it's necessary that you have a teacher. It's necessary that you have support. It's necessary that you have some cheerleaders along the path. My teacher was like a father. He was a cheerleader. He straightened me out, when I went off course. He kept me sane. He counseled me. He held me while I cried. Without this, I surely would have been lost. It's important to have a teacher, a support system, and to do whatever you need to do to relax the body. To relax the body. And so, here's one more question. This is from Kate. Craig, kundalini again. I'm trying my dearest to love all the scared parts of myself. I have such grief for the life I know is available to be lived. I relate to the person talking about the brain damage. It's so scary. It is scary. It is scary. I have fear that I'm not doing it right. And I've heard you say, live anyway. And I've heard you say, live anyway. And I'm doing that. But I'm wearing myself out. I have zero energy and I have to keep things afloat. Ironically, my life is completely more than ever in the flow, but I feel nothing but depression and fear. Yeah. I just hope that it's not 15 years because I love the life so much. It will transmute, Kate. I encourage you to have faith. To have faith, to trust. Sometimes God gives us a life that's quite difficult, and our whole path is about having faith and trust. Faith and trust. One of the things that we are in charge of, that we have free will over, is our attitude. When we are in pain, our mind is just flooded with thoughts of hell, of pain, of overwhelm, of this is too much. There was this great saint who lived back at the time of World War II named Viktor Frankl. He lived through the Holocaust. He lived in the concentration camps. And he saw that the Nazis could take everything from him literally. Food, drink, friends, family, starve him to death. But they could not take his attitude. And he chose to adopt an attitude of faith, of trust, of healing, of strength. And sometimes we're given a life that is so utterly overwhelming. And we have to learn. We're forced to learn. We have no choice but to come into contact with that which is greater. And this is a voice greater than our own ego, greater than our own ability to love. When we feel like we can't do it anymore, when it's too much, call on God to live in you, to give you the strength. Too often we call on God, will you end this? Will you please end this? Will you stop this? This is too much. I can't handle it. But God is saying, no, I want you to discover you are a goddess. I want you to discover that you are something quite profound, that you are a master being who's greater than any experience of pain. God's inviting the very nature of the fight or flight response to be burnt out of your body. And by that I mean to be cooked. To be cooked. And so sometimes we might just lay in bed and just hold ourselves and invite God to simultaneously hold us, life to hold us. If you're a Buddhist, you invite the 10,000 Buddhas to hold you, for Kuan Yin to hold you. If you're a Christian, you invite Christ, the Holy Spirit, to hold you, to live through you, to give you the strength to live a greater life, a greater life. Okay, let's see here. There's one more question. This is from Wesley. Craig, there has been a recognition that the self is a fiction, that there is no center, there is just what is, conditions and causes, and yet the conditioning in this human body continues, just no longer belongs to anyone. Even though thoughts don't have a self to stick to, nonetheless, they are capable of wreaking havoc on the body, which is experiencing strong anxiety and panic caused by old patterns, full of brutal thoughts, and no center does not seem to change that. Is it a problem to the no one, no self, and yet the poor body, mind, any thoughts? Yeah, that's a great question, Wesley. So this is the difference between, say, the path of Aurobindo, which I'm describing, and the path of Buddhism. Oftentimes Buddhism, in its most basic sense, is a path of transcendence. But in transcendence, the body doesn't change, the mind doesn't change. If it does change, it changes very little. And so what's required, for you is for you to adopt the path of healing, of transmutation, the path of, say, Christ, or the later schools of Buddhism that actually embraced pain deeply within one's consciousness. If we don't do this, nothing will change. So we can wake up and out of body and realize there's no center, no one here, nothing to do, realize our absolute perfect nature. But our body is a creature of habit. Our mind is a creature of habit. Our emotional nature is a creature of habit. And those habits will cause pain to your human body, your human mind, your human emotional nature. It will also cause pain and confusion to those around you. And so the beautiful thing about life on planet Earth and not being a monk is we're not really allowed to have a big gaping shadow and just transcend or avoid. We have to face everything within us if we want to be able to function in a reasonable manner here on planet Earth. And so God, life, the universe, forces us to face what's within us. The beautiful thing about realizing transcendence first, or this sense of, what you're calling freedom or no center first, is you're in contact with the silence. And in the silence is this supreme sanity. And so from this place of supreme sanity and clarity, I invite you to invoke the love of your heart, Wesley. And Wesley, you have a very tender and innocent heart. Can you invite that innocence forward? And to love the little boy in you, who's afflicted with pain, who's stricken with pain, who's been abused by life. Can you invite your heart to come forward and shine and love and embrace? Can you invite this incredible strength within you, the strength that has outlived every experience, to come forward and not just stand back aloof and say, oh, those things happened, but they're irrelevant to what I am. To admit those things happened, and there's a human being here who's worthy of love. Worthy of love. When we realize we are worthy of love, it changes everything. We see healing is possible, growth is possible. And so anyways, so nice to meet with you all. I see I went over a couple minutes, so I'll do my best to end here. I want to thank everyone for offering donations and supporting the Sangha, supporting this broadcast. If you feel like doing that, please visit craigholliday.com, and there's a donate link there. All kinds of good stuff coming up in the future here. I look forward to putting a retreat on the schedule. I'll be at the Science and Non-Duality Conference coming up in October. And I look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday evenings in meditation. May peace be with you all, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.